Okay, so let us go into layer number 1. So for this lesson, we will cover layer number 1, which is the research philosophy. Now, the term research philosophy refers to a system of beliefs and assumptions about the development of knowledge. So basically, this is about knowledge. Okay, so that's why, okay, this is important, especially those who are doing PhD. So when you are doing PhD, meaning that if you succeed, then you will be given the title Doctor of Philosophy. So why is it that you are a Doctor of Philosophy? Because philosophy relates to actually the development of knowledge. So meaning that when you have the title Doctor of Philosophy, that is a great testament to you that you have contributed something significant in terms of knowledge. So that's why, okay, even you are doing information systems, even you are doing computer science, or even in you are doing in mathematics. So basically, the contribution that matters is contribution to knowledge. Okay, so in a way that you are a doctor in this philosophy, because philosophy relates to knowledge. Okay, now there are three types of research assumptions to distinguish the different research philosophies. Okay, now these assumptions, okay, these types of assumptions are ontology, epistemology, and axiology. Okay, now let us go one by one. Ontology refers to assumptions about the nature of reality. Now, our ontology, therefore, determines how we see the world related to our research area. So basically, in general, okay, so we will look into examples later on. Now, the second one is epistemology. Now, epistemology concerns assumptions about knowledge, what constitutes acceptable, valid, and legitimate knowledge, and how we can communicate knowledge to others. Okay, so meaning that when we say that, okay, for example, that you are doing PhD, or even you are doing master's degree. So basically, what's the difference? Okay, PhD is actually significant contribution to knowledge, and master's is actually contribution to knowledge. So now the only difference is significance or not. Okay, so basically both relates to contribution to knowledge. So meaning that when you want to have the title of PhD or masters, basically, and then there is a question, what kind of knowledge that is valid? So for example, it is, if you develop, let's say, a software or a mobile application, is it considered knowledge? Okay, or perhaps if you do a survey, okay, you get the findings about something, is that considered a valid knowledge? So basically, this is why we need to study this research philosophy, so that we know that each philosophy will have their own definition of knowledge, and we need to understand the philosophy that you, especially as candidate, as either in a PhD or master's degree, okay, what is your philosophy? Okay, what are your philosophy, and what kind of knowledge that is acceptable in that kind of philosophy? So this is very important. Okay, we are going to discuss this later on. Okay, number 3 is axiology. So axiology refers to the role of values, within the research process. So this incorporates questions about how we as researchers deal with both our own values and those of our research participants. Okay, let us actually, this is about something like a definition here. Okay, we need to go into context to understand this. Now, before we go into each of that ontology, epistemology, and axiology, so we are going to actually describe about the research philosophy, and then for each of this philosophy, we are going to relate. So, what is the ontology, epistemology, and also the axiology for each? Okay, so basically, so this is how we can differentiate between any of the research philosophy that we are discussing. So for the context of this particular lesson, okay, I'm going to focus on three major research philosophies, which is positivism, interpretism, and pragmatism. So I believe that for any research, for most of the people, will embrace either one of these. Okay, let us go to the first one. This is positivism. Okay, positivism relates to the philosophical stance of the natural scientists and entails working with an observable social reality to produce law-like generalizations. Okay, now this particular research philosophy basically relates to this natural scientist. Okay, what is natural scientist? What is natural science? Okay, these are physics, chemistry, biology. So things that are related, things or elements that are related to the actually to the nature, to nature. Okay, so so here it says that actually whatever research, when you do research, when you actually embrace this particular philosophical stance, okay, anything that you research on must be observable. Observable meaning that you can observe based on the sense. Okay, you can look at it, you can hear it. Okay, you can feel the heat, for example. So meaning that these are all observable entities, and the reality is related to something observable, and the result of that is actually some law-like generalizations. Meaning that when you say law-like, it's like something that will not change. For example, let me give you an example. Let's say gravity. Okay, so if an object, okay, falls down to the ground, so actually the gravity is 9.8 meters, okay, meters squared. Okay, so basically that is actually the gravity at the surface of the planet Earth, for example. So meaning that wherever you go at the surface of the planet, basically at the sea level, that will be the gravity. But of course, when you go up, perhaps the gravity will be less, but there is like a formula to calculate this. So meaning that the formula will not change. Will not change for anyone. So either a Malaysian or if you go for American. So basically it's like a law, something that cannot change. So this is the natural law. Okay, so this is a positivism. Okay, now the goal of knowledge in this research philosophy is simply to describe the phenomena that we experience. So meaning that when we experience something, so we try to describe, so what's happening. So basically we describe in such a way that to say that, oh, this is absolute. For example, let's say that we feel hot. We feel hot. How hot is hot? So basically, there is a technique and a tool to measure the hotness. So this is called the thermometer. So for example, if you say that the water boils at when it is hot, the water will actually convert into vapor, into water vapor. So basically, that is 100 Celsius. So if the water is become very cold and it actually turns into ice, so basically it is 0 Celsius. So basically, when you say that 0 Celsius and 100 Celsius is considered absolute. It's like law, and this is what we call the natural law, something that will not change, regardless of whether I'm the one who is actually boiling the water, or perhaps you have someone else who are boiling the water. Okay, the law remains the same for everyone. Okay, regardless of who are doing it under the same condition. But of course, if you, for example, you boil the water, you put in something else inside, so the water will not be pure water, so it will be different. Or perhaps if you go high above Mount Everest and you try to actually boil the water, perhaps there will be some differences, but that is part of the formula, or meaning that the mechanics of something that happens. But in general, it is absolute. It will not change because of anyone else. Okay? Now, the positivist believes in empiricism. Okay, something that is empirical. What does empirical means? That some things that can be seen, can be sensed by, actually can be felt by our eyes. We can see, we can taste it, we can hear about it. Okay, we can feel it, and so on. Okay, so the positivist is a scientist who actually subscribe to this positivism. So the idea that observation and measurement is the core of the scientific endeavor. So meaning that whatever research that is done, if you subscribe this positivism research philosophy, it must be observed, it must be able to be measured. Knowledge of anything beyond that is considered impossible. So meaning that if you are a positivist, it's quite impossible for you to actually measure happiness, sadness, anger, because basically we can observe that people are angry, but we cannot actually observe directly what is anger. Can you see anger? Something. Okay. Or similarly, let's say that some people believe that there is ghost. Okay, there is ghost, but can we see ghosts, or can we measure? Can we observe? So that is another challenge altogether. So basically, based on this positivism, knowledge of anything beyond that is considered impossible. Okay, now the last one for positivism. Positivist uses deductive reasoning to postulate theories that can be tested. Okay, this deductive reasoning is something that we actually will discuss in detail, okay, in the layer number 2, okay, which is the approach to theory development. Okay, so for this one, so I will actually not discuss this here, so we will discuss this soon. Now this is positivism. So when we look into in the context of the ontology epistemology and axiology. Okay. Now positivism in context of the ontology, which is actually ontology means that simply means the nature of reality or being. So for positivism, okay, the world is real. Is real. It is external and it is independent. Okay, for example, let's say that a scientist observes, let's say, the sea. Okay, the sea, there's water, lots of water, and of course there are life in the sea. So actually it is real. It is an object that is real, something that you can observe, you can see. Okay, now it is external. Okay, external means that it's not in the mind of human being. It's not based on perception of human being. So regardless of whether human being exists or not, okay, the world is real. Okay, so basically this is what we call external, something that is beyond human being. So now the scientists will actually observe the sea, but if the scientists chose not to observe the sea, the sea still exists. So regardless. So this is what we call external. External means that something that is outside the human being. Okay, human being does not have control on what is out there. Okay, and one interesting thing, the word positivism. Actually, this comes from Latin. Okay, posit. Posit means something that is given. Something that is given. So meaning that when we say that the world around us is something that is given to us. So it's not ours, but it is the creator owns this, but it is something that gives to us, so that we can actually share that and we can benefit from it. But something that is external. And thirdly, it is independent. So meaning that it is independent. Okay, whatever the existence of all these things, okay, you have the world, the sky, the sea, and so on. It is independent of human being. Okay, it does not actually depend on human being to actually accept that this exists. It exists because it exists, independent of whether we believe it exists or we do not believe it exists. Okay, so this is actually the first one, the first point, the ontology, the nature. Okay, now another one is it is one true reality, universalism. Universalism meaning that when we say that, like just now I say about gravity. Now the gravity, if you go into the context of planet Earth, it is the same everywhere. Okay, there is only one true reality about gravity. For example, let's say that just now I give example of the boiling temperature of water, where water turns into water vapor. So 100 Celsius. So basically, there is one true reality, meaning that 100 Celsius anywhere. So there is only one true reality. So regardless of people thinks that it is not 100 Celsius, but in actuality, it is 100 Celsius. And the freezing point is 0 Celsius. So this is what we call universalism. Universalism. Okay. Point number 3 is it is granular. Granular means that it is something that you can actually separate it one by one. It is things, an object, okay, that is separate from one another. So even when we take, let's say that we want to study about a leaf on a tree. So a leaf is granular because it is an object that is separate. Okay, Even you go into, let's say, a rock. A rock is granular. It is things. Okay, even water is actually granular, although you can say water is liquid. How can you split this? But in theory, water is actually consists of H2O, that is a molecule, whereby it is very small, too small to the extent that we as human being, we cannot hold that in a way that you want to hold one molecule. But theoretically, it is actually possible if we are very small, like microscopic small, if that is possible. Okay, but in general, nature is granular because it consists of things. And the last point for ontology, it is ordered. Okay, ordered means that uh, whatever that you see, okay, in nature, it is actually governed by certain rule. Governed by certain rule. Okay, as for those who actually, people say that it is by natural law, but for those who believe in God, they say that this is God's law. So meaning that everything in nature works based on a certain rule. Okay, so this is what positivism believes in what is considered reality. So anything else beyond this, this is not considered some a reality. Okay, for example, let's say that some people, okay, when they say that to the extent that uh, collective anger, for example, no, let's say a situation in some countries, okay, the people are angry with those who are in power, so there is a collective anger. Okay, now collective anger, we can see that people are angry, but the anger itself, we cannot actually observe based on our sense, in terms of we cannot see the anger. There's no object. And when we say that anger, there's no one true reality in terms of anger. Okay, because no, the level of anger is different. Okay, and it's very subjective in nature, and it is not granular. Okay, meaning that we cannot actually hold like we hold an object, and it is not ordered because it's like chaos. Okay, something, anger is not something that is governed by specific rule, similar to like the rule of gravity and so on. So basically, that is the different things. Now this is positivism for ontology. Now now the second part is the epistemology. So now epistemology is what constitutes acceptable knowledge. Now in terms of acceptable knowledge, okay, for anyone to observe, okay, to actually to involve in research, it must be using scientific method. Okay, now scientific method, because this is method something that we will cover later on. Okay, so in general, we only observe based on some scientific method. It is observable and measurable facts. So you need to be able to observe. We need to be able to measure. Okay, like anger, we can see that we can observe anger in people, but we don't really see anger as one object. What color is anger? We cannot see that, but we can see that people are angry. So that is another thing. Okay, and we must be able to measure it factually. So meaning that if you have, let's say, it is hot, can we measure the level of heat? Okay, the level of heat. So we use a thermometer. So meaning that if you actually, there are 10 thermometers, and if the thermometers are working, are functioning correctly, you will find that the temperature will be the same for all 10 instruments. and there is only one reality, that is the temperature, although you use different thermometers, and even it is taken by different people. So this is, it must be observable and it must be measurable. Okay, and the acceptable knowledge is also law-like generalization. So meaning that when we say that law-like, so whatever generalizations, it must actually be applicable to the conditions that is based on the law. For example, let's say that if you take water, okay, at the sea level, okay, at a place at sea level, okay, so if you boil the water, so it is law, like the natural law is that it will actually turn into water vapor at 100 Celsius, and it will freeze into ice, okay, at 0 Celsius. So at the level of of course there are some other elements to that, such as the pressure, okay, and so on. So basically, but in general, there is a law to calculate this. Okay, it is law like generalizations, and it is applicable to all conditions. Okay, now acceptable knowledge is numbers are also part of acceptable knowledge. So meaning that the result, it must be able to, whatever it is, must be able to be represented by numbers. Okay, and the causal explanation and prediction as contribution. So meaning that in terms of knowledge, okay, positivists actually will part of it is try to look for what is the cause of certain things, what is the effect of certain things, or for them, if you have the cause, you can predict what will happen next. So meaning that this is prediction. So basically all this, okay, if we can actually achieve this, this is considered as acceptable knowledge. This is epistemology. Okay. Now the third assumptions that we would make is what we call axiology, which is the role of values. Okay, the first point is in positivism, okay, the research is value free. Okay, what does value means? Okay, for example, let's say that if I am doing scientific research, okay, under the positivism research philosophy, and let's say that I am a Muslim, and it's not, let's say I am a Muslim, I am a Muslim. Okay, as a Muslim, when I conduct whatever positivist related research, okay, so my value as a Muslim, okay, should and cannot influence the result. So if, for example, somehow, okay, whatever belief that I hold, or perhaps someone else doing the same thing, whatever beliefs that that person hold, okay, can change the result, then it is impossible to say, it is impossible that this particular research is a positivism research. It's impossible because in positivism, your values or the researcher's values will not influence the result. For example, like if you boil water, say if you are a Muslim, or even if you are a Christian, or even if you are a Hindu, or even if you are a Buddhist, or even you are an atheist, okay, it does not matter because the boiling water will still be 100 degree Celsius. So it is value free. Okay, now relate to that, the researcher is also detached, neutral, and independent of what is research. Meaning that, so whatever happens. So we, regardless of who we are, in what condition we are, will not have any influence, okay, on the actual what's going on. Because natural law, it 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 is actually truly independent of human being. So this is actually the axiology, the values. And if there is some elements of we as a researcher needs to actually do something, to be active in a certain task, so a researcher should maintain an objective stance. There's no room for subjectivity, okay, in this. So now, when you have all these elements, ontology, epistemology, and axiology, so in a way that how I have described to you just now, so this is what we actually describe as the positivism research philosophy.